Hey guys, Delt here. So, you just downloaded Dark and Darker, you don't know what class to play, what gear to grab, or how to even survive against a PvE in this game. Maybe you have people chasing after you and killing you every game, and you can't even stand a fighting chance. Well, this video here should help. I'm going to go through all of the classes, give my perspective on beginner-friendly options, and explain why I think other classes aren't as much. That doesn't mean you shouldn't play them. All of the classes in this game are fun. There are just some that are easier for learning the game with at first. I'm also going to talk about what all of the stats do, and then I'm just going to voice over a level 1 run. Anyway, let's jump right into it. Fighter, in my opinion, is the most beginner-friendly option. You have a base of 15 in every stat, will learn how to fight mobs, can wear some plate armor to take less damage from mobs while you're learning, and you even have access to weapon mastery as a perk. This means that when you equip that perk, you can try out every weapon in the game other than spellcasting weapons like a spellbook, since you won't have any spells. You can also get sprint, which is a movement speed increase, and second wind, that is a one-time option to heal yourself for a ton. Barbarians, much like fighters, are another tank class in this game, except they focus more on magic resistance than they do physical damage reduction. Barbarians are a good beginner class, but they're a little worse at it than fighters in my opinion. What barbarians do really great at is hitting really hard with their two-handed weapons. This could be a battle axe, a felling axe, a Zweihander, you name it. If there's a two-handed weapon, they can probably use it, and they are going to hurt with it. They also start with a ton of health. I don't know what their actual base stat is, but if you put on Robust as your first perk, this increases your health to 153 in base kit. That's about 50 more than every other class in the game, 40 more than fighters. My reasoning for saying that they're slightly worse as a beginner-friendly option is that if you miss with the battle axe, which is your starting weapon, you're kind of just screwed. It has a very long swing, and it takes a long time to be able to swing again. Rogues, on the other hand, are not very beginner friendly, but they are a ton of fun. You don't have a lot of health, you start with a very minimal amount of damage, but you can swing really fast with your daggers, you can move really quickly, you can open doors faster than any other class in the game. You are a rat until you get gear. Once you get gear, you start to be really strong, but in the beginning stages of the game, especially if you're struggling with getting hit by mobs pretty frequently, this is not a good class to learn. If you just think of rogues as like the assassin-like class in every other game, they have a very high skill cap and honestly a pretty high skill floor too. You need to at least know the very basics of the game before you pick up this class. I'm not telling you not to do it. Again, it's just you're going to have a lot more success early on as a fighter or some of these other more beginner-friendly classes than you are as a rogue. Rangers, just like rogues, have a lot of agility and they have a lot of resourcefulness. That means that you run pretty quickly, and you can open doors and open chests and get around the map very quickly. But I do think that this is more of a beginner-friendly class. As long as you have decent aim in other video games, you could probably pick up Ranger and be hitting your shots and doing all right. They also have a skill called Field Rations. You have 3 charges with that, and each of them you eat a cookie and you heal 25 health. That is very beginner friendly because if you mess up, you get hit by a mob, oh well, I have field rations. Everything's gonna be fine. You can also use them mid-combat. So if you're fighting another ranger or a fighter with a crossbow and you get hit, you just field rations, you're back to full health, and then you can keep fighting. I really think that this is a beginner friendly class, but just know that if you are playing ranger, your focus is your bow. You are not a melee user. If you try to fight most other classes in the game in melee range, you are more than likely going to lose. And then we have the wizard. I love the wizard, but this is again a class that is not beginner friendly. You don't start with a lot of health. You don't clear mobs easily at all. Even with Ignite, like it takes 4 or 5 hits. And if you get hit by a goblin, you're down 50% of your health. But the wizard's saving grace is a very, very high skill ceiling and a lot of damage. This is going to be the main carry for the majority of trios teams. It is the main carry for a majority of trios teams between Fireball, Chain Lightning, Magic Missile, all these different really cool spells. You will output a ton of damage, but the minute that you get caught out or the minute you get headshot by a crossbow, your fight is over. You need to leave or you're going to die. All in all, this class is amazing and I would definitely recommend trying it at some point, but I wouldn't ever tell people that this is a good first class that you should play. Cleric, on the other hand, I think is very beginner friendly. It's actually the class that I learned the game on. This is the main support for the game alongside Druid. You have a ton of self heal, so you can heal your team, you can buff up, you can give yourself protection shields, you can do a ton of things on cleric. And yes, learning spellcasting is probably not the most beginner friendly thing in the game, but I honestly don't think it's that bad either. And between Cleric and Warlock, these are the two classes that I would recommend learning spellcasting on. But with Cleric, there is one really big drawback, and that is your move speed. Every other class in the game is going to outrun you. Even a fighter with sprint will probably catch up to you if he's in full plate armor, and that's just because you don't have any mobility increases other than Bless, and Bless really doesn't give you that much move speed anyway. However, with Cleric, you are learning spellcasting, you're learning melee, and you're learning how to use a shield all in one, so I think that is a very, very good learning class to start with. Moving on to Bard, which is my favorite class in the game, and if you watch my other videos, you'll see that they are mostly Bard videos. However, I do not think that this is a beginner-friendly class at all. You're going to get really confused by song usage, and it's just added things that you're doing between each fight and at the start of each fight. You need to make sure that your constant buffs are always on, you need to make sure you debuff the enemies, and you need to make sure that you buff up yourself, all before starting your fight. Once you learn how to do that though, this class is very good. It's sort of a mix between a fighter, rogue, and ranger. You can put on a decent amount of PDR, you can move quickly, you use a rapier just like a rogue does, and you have a survival bow or a crossbow depending on your preference. You're good at melee, long range, and mid range, and you can do a ton of damage, but it is just a lot of added extra steps that make this class a bit more difficult than say a fighter or a ranger. I highly recommend that you do try Bard at some point because I think it's a ton of fun, but I would definitely start off and just learn the game on another class first. Alright, and then we have Warlock, which out of all the spellcasting classes is honestly probably the best one to start with. You can be both decent in melee and medium range. You don't really have too many long range options other than Shadow Bolt, which I don't think is the best spell, but you do get a perk called Shadow Touch, which means every time you hit with your melee weapon, you're doing 3 true magical damage, so that's just 3 flat damage every time you swing, and you're getting that health back. So if you're struggling with PvE at first, or you want to learn different bosses, then Warlock is really good because of that. They also have another perk called Torture Mastery, and you can heal with Power of Sacrifice and Curse of Pain every time you cast with it. That also makes it beginner friendly for learning spellcasts because you're just draining the life out of all of the PvE around you. So if you get hit, it's fine, you'll still be able to heal yourself. All right, and lastly we have Druid. I've honestly only played one game with Druid so far, and I don't really know what to say about it yet. I don't think it's beginner friendly though, because you are having to worry about your shape-shifting forms and your spells, and so it's just a lot of different things going on. I do think the class is a ton of fun, being able to change into a rat or a panther or a bear, and you also get a decent amount of healing, so it might be relatively beginner friendly. But I think if you want to play this class, I'd probably just start you off with Cleric first. Again, I'm not telling you not to play classes, just it doesn't seem the easiest to learn the game on, in my opinion. So just as a little recap, I do think that the 4 easiest classes to learn the game on are Fighter, Ranger, Cleric, and Warlock. Again, you can play anything. I just think that those are the easiest to learn the base mechanics of the game with first. So now we got to talk about what them stats do. If you ever forget, just hover over each one and it'll tell you. I'm showing this on Fighter because they have a base of 15 on everything, and this is one of the reasons why they're the most well-rounded classes in the game. Strength increases both your damage and your health. Vigor increases your health and how much you heal while resting. Agility increases your interaction speed, your move speed, and your action speed. A base 15 move speed without wearing boots or added clothes gives you 300 move speed. You usually want to be at 300 or more, and there is a hard cap at 330 that you will never be able to pass. Interaction speed is how quickly you can open doors and chests, and action speed is how quickly you attack with your weapons. This affects both melee and ranged. It also affects how quickly you reload your crossbows. Dexterity increases your action speed more than agility, but the only other thing that it gives is item equip speed, which can be good for equipping throwing knives and throwing axes mid-fight, but other than that, there's no real uses for that. I did skip over manual dexterity also. That's a bard only thing, and it increases how quickly you play your songs. Will increases your magic damage, how quickly you interact with shrines and escape portals, and it also increases your magic resistance. Knowledge gives quicker spellcasting, and it also increases your memory capacity. I'll show how memory capacity works right after this on Warlock. And resourcefulness, just like agility, increases your interaction speed with doors and chests. There are soft caps for each of these main stats, but I'll talk about those in a separate video if anybody wants to know what they are. I'm trying to keep the information relatively basic for now and just go over what you need to know before starting a game. To show how memory capacity works, we first need to get on a class that uses it. I just chose Warlock, but you could also use Wizard, Cleric, Druid, or Bard. And then we're going to go to the class tab up at the top of the screen, and then we're going to hit spells. When we're there at the bottom of the screen, it's showing our memory capacity. I took all of our spells off, and it's showing that we used 0 out of our 9 limit right now. Each spell that we select will equal its tier. So tier 1s will cost 1, tier 2s will cost 2, tier 3s will cost 3, etc. From here, depending on your memory capacity limit, you can select whatever spells you want to, and they will show up on the bottom of the screen in your spell memory priority. What you want to do is first put on your most important spells. If I'm playing a Torture Mastery Warlock, so we're going to heal off of Power of Sacrifice and Curse of Pain, I want those spells to be the first ones there, so I always have them. After that, you are able to overcap your memory capacity. That doesn't affect the spells that are within the limits. All that's doing is if you find more knowledge within the game and you equip it, you'll be able to use those added spells now, but they fill up in the order of your priority. For example, if I get 3 more knowledge with how I'm set up right now, I'll be able to cast Hellfire. After that, I'll need 6 more knowledge to also be able to cast Hydra. If I flipped it around the other way, I would be able to cast Hydra first, but I don't really think I want to. I'd rather have Flamewalker, Hellfire, then Hydra if I don't really have a lot of magical healing, and that's just going into more game knowledge and build knowledge. But for now, just know, when you are equipping your spells, if you overcap, it will fill whatever song is first in your spell memory priority bar at the bottom. But wait, there's even more to do and even more to know before you even start a game. First things first, we're gonna go into the merchant tab, and every merchant that has a little yellow exclamation point above their head, we're going to click. We're gonna click the quest tab and we're gonna accept. We don't need to know what they are yet. Just click and accept each and every one of them. And then when you go back to the main screen, when you hit play, at the bottom right, there's going to be a little box that says quest log. If you click that, you'll be able to see all of your quests without clicking on your merchants ever again. From here, you can turn in, finish your quests, and accept new quests all from the same screen. You never have to click your merchants, and you never need to click your quest tab again. And that's basically all you need to know about questing. You'll get some gear, you'll get some money. It's worth doing. I think every 3 quests you turn in with one person also gives you more from your squire. But what's the squire? All right, so you're gonna go back to the merchant tab, and then you're gonna click on the squire. What this guy does is he lets you set up your own base kit. So in the center, you'll see what is your base gear. You can right click everything to get rid of it, and then you can click on new things and put them wherever you want them. I'm just doing it here for my ranger because that's what I'm gonna do my solo game on. And then after that, you could always just sell or stash the green gear you find in your normals, and then come here, hit equip base gear, and you're good to go for the next game. If you don't make it out and you die, that's completely fine. You'll just start off with whatever you set next time. This is definitely worth the few seconds of doing it, and questing makes it even better because you'll get a lot more options of what you can equip, both in weapons and in gear later on. So for my ranger, I basically just picked everything that has dexterity. I picked a rapier over the arming sword because I like that better. I set the bow as my second slot instead of the first because that's where I like it. And then I grabbed a pot, a health pot, and a bandage, so I have all 3 of them every time I start a game. And then the last thing that you're going to want to do before even starting a game is to click on class again and go to perks and skills. Here you can pick your perks, which are the 4 things at the top that you slowly unlock as you hit level 5, 10, and 15. And the bottom 2 are your skills or active abilities. Because I'm starting in base kit, and I don't have any extra health pots or bandages, I'm making sure to take field rations on my ranger so I get that recoverable health. Other than that, you can choose quick shot and multi-shot. I'm not going to go over every class here. I'm just going to show what I'm doing so you can see where it is and you can make your own choices from there. Regardless, for any class at level 1, there's a pretty decent amount of perk options. These are just passive damage increases. Like I could go sharpshooter to get more headshot damage with my bows. That'll help me clear through the mobs faster. I could go crippling shot to try to be safer. I think I just went with ranged weapon mastery though, because it was a solid overall option that didn't have any downsides to it. All right, and the last thing that we need to talk about before getting into a game are the maps. All of the maps are on a 3-minute rotation between solo, duo, and trio, so you can play any one regardless of your party size. If we're trying to keep this as beginner friendly as possible, I would recommend to skip over the Frost Mountain and only go to the Goblin Caves or the ruins of the Forgotten Castle, also known as the Howling Crypts. I promise you, the Ice Caves is a lot more difficult than the other 2 maps. If you don't believe me, here's this. All right, and with that out of the way, we're going to be going into the Howling Crypts for our first game on our Ranger. While you are in the lobby here, you are able to see your damage if you ever care about that. There are test dummies, and I'll show you where they are right now. Okay, so here we are in our first game on our Ranger, and at its core, Dark and Darker is an extraction game. So we want to be able to get as much loot, as much quest items, and as much gold as we can, and then we want to get out. There's a lot of fun to be had with PvP, but knowing how to clear PvE is a lot more important at first, so that way you can move around the map, you can loot more, and you can catch people off guard while they're looting. Fun fact, if you're ever here, you can look at a book and activate it, and it opens up this little passageway. When you're first playing Dark and Darker, just look at everything, because there's a lot of little like levers and books that you can activate, and they actually more often than not lead to really good loot. For example, here we have a Royal Coffin and a Lion's Head chest. Royal Coffin, Lion's Head, and Golden chests are 3 of the best loot sources in the game, so you want to get to as many of those as possible. The biggest problem is that Golden chests are always locked, so you need to have pick locks to be able to get those. Royal Coffins and Lion's Head aren't always locked, and they're still really good sources of loot, so just try to find as many of those as you possibly can. And just in case you've never run into spike traps before, I threw my torch at it so you would see. I actually get hit by these a few times while in here because I'm bad at the video game, but basically as long as you don't step on them, they don't activate. If you want to get over them without taking damage, you need to jump and crouch. I did it too late once or twice here, so yeah, my bad. There is another lever, behind this royal coffin. I forgot to grab it, and that's actually why I took damage here, because I jumped back to get it. And I told you there was a lion's head. This is where the lion's head is. So the first book brings you to the royal coffin. The lever brings you to the lion's head. This Y-hander skeleton swings once or twice, depending. He always ends with his swing all the way to your left. So you either just back up and wait for him to be done, or you crouch and look down, and you should be low enough to not get hit. And as soon as he's done, you keep hitting him. I took those boots over the max health ones because they're both giving me strength and dexterity. With rangers, I really like having strength and dexterity as my two main stats that I stack up because I'm getting more damage and I'm doing more damage more quickly. That green shrine that you see in front of you is a health shrine. When I use that, I'll get all of my health back, but there are skeletons and a skeletal champion in the way. A skeletal champion is a sub boss, which is relatively difficult to kill, and I'm going to show you both ways that you're capable of killing it here. The first way is to cheese it. You can cheese most sub bosses just by getting to a location where they can't hit you. With more game knowledge, you'll start to learn where these things are. At that point, they'll stop moving, and you'll either be close enough to hit them with your melee weapon, or in this case, just use your ranged option. To fight the skeletal champion without cheesing him takes a whole lot more time. He has different combos that can either go from 1 swing, 2 swings, or 3 swings. And after he ends each one, you walk up, you hit him once, and then you run away. He swings again, does one of his combos, then you walk up, you hit him once or twice, and then you run away. And you just repeat this on and on. There used to be a strategy with the skeletal champion where you could cheese him with a buckler because it would end his attack strings, but that no longer works. So this is the only way to fight the skeletal champion unless you cheese him. When it comes to the different skeletons in this room, all of them so far have been footmen. With those, you just do the same thing. You hit them once or twice, they swing. You hit them once or twice, and it's pretty easy. When you are dodging their attacks, don't press your S key. If you press your S key to back up, you actually take a movement speed penalty. And that's why a lot of the times you'll see me turning my mouse to the side and I'm moving to the left and right with A and D, because you do that a whole lot faster than you just walk straight backwards. And now that we're at our health shrine, we can use that to get full health. You interact with the health shrine the same way as everything else. By default, it's the F key. If you changed it, it's whatever everything else is. This skeleton is an axeman, and they are a whole lot more dangerous than footmen. They have a long range frontal attack, so you can't really just walk backwards out of it. Instead, you have to dodge him to the left and right. But he also has a side swing that will hit you if you go left or right. So if you see him do that one, you need to walk backwards, crouch, and look down, and it shouldn't hit you. And one really good strategy that I can give you for trying to survive at least your first match is to just stick to the outside of the map. All you want to do is get enough gold so that you can buy health pots or bandages, or if you're playing a fighter or a bard, a ranged weapon. After that, you're good to go. And I didn't tell you about the mummies. They have 2 attacks. The first one is a lunging forward attack. You don't really need to worry too much about that. You can walk to the left, you can walk to the right, or you can back up. All 3 of those options work. He also has a hand slap attack. With that, you just back up. It's completely fine. You don't need to worry about that one at all. I dropped the old cloth there, but that is one of your very first quest items. I'm doing quests mainly on my bard, and I just forgot that it was a quest item. Don't drop those if you see them, at least until you get your quest done. So at this point in the game, I walked into this room. Some of the coffins are looted and skeletons are dead. I saw where the other player went because I knew that there's a wall that was broken down. And then as I got closer, I started to hear him and I heard that he was a druid. If you are new to the game, you can do what I do. I'm gonna go and try to fight him because I haven't really seen how druids work too much yet. And I kind of just want to be able to see what they do. If you were just trying to survive your first game, turn around and walk the other way. Shut the doors behind you and he shouldn't be able to get to you. But I wanted to fight him like I said before, so that's what you're gonna see here. You're also gonna see me miss most of my arrows. The very first thing that he did was summon a treant, and then he started to cast another spell. I didn't want to get rooted and get hit by the treant, so I just backed up some more. I thought he was going to be able to get in here as a panther, so I just swapped my arming sword and was going to take the melee fight, but then I realized that he couldn't and that I'm completely fine. He then swapped into a rat, and I knew that he only has 5 health, so I'm going to try to hit him with my melee weapon, but he's so small that it's really hard. And that was a very bad fight on my part, but we got him, so it worked out. I immediately used my field rations to get 25 health back, and we're going to see what he has for us. He does have a decent amount of heals, so I'll just be able to heal back up with those, or I could just keep using my field rations. Either way, in my opinion, it's probably better just to use your field rations first, because you're just going to get the 3 back the next game you play anyway, whereas if you use these health pots, you're not going to get them back. And the direction that I'm heading right here is toward an escape. You can see the escape on the minimap by the little blue staircase. I'm just going to clear to that now in case I decide it's something that I want to take. But for now, we're just going to clear there and see what we want to do. The blue torches outlining the little upward staircase is our exit. If you find the same thing, but it has red torches, that isn't going up, that's going down into Inferno. If you go there, the mobs are going to get harder and you're going to get more loot, but it's a whole lot more dangerous. So I'd recommend just learning the original mobs first. Once you can string together like 5 to 10 games and not really be too scared anymore, then take the down portal. It's basically simulating High Roller, and I feel like it's a really good step up without actually having to risk any gear. So I just decided at this point, we're going to leave, and I'm going to show what we're going to do after we get an extraction. This is a decent amount of loot. We have an escape right here. It's our first game. It's gonna be fine. You could stay longer, you could clear more mobs, you could open more chests, get more experience, but getting out is more experience than dying. Surviving is always going to be better than dying every single time. So now that you survived your very first game, the very first thing we're going to do is go into our quest log and see if there's anything that we can turn in or anything that we've completed. If any looted bandages ended up going into one of your slots, they will not count and you need to take them out. So that's just what I was checking here. After that, we're going to go to the merchants. We're going to click on the collector, and the collector will take all of our worthless junk that we picked up, everything that basically isn't gear that you wear. And for that run, which honestly wasn't the best, we were still able to get 260 gold and some green gear. From here, you have 2 choices. You can either stash all of your gear or you can sell it for more gold. It's fully up to you. Side note tip that's helpful, if you shift right click, things will immediately go into your stash. That's what I'm doing with all the gold right now. Shift, and right click. And now whatever gear that I'm deciding I want to keep is also going into my stash, and I'm going to sell the rest of it to any other merchant that isn't the collector. I think I basically only sold the buckled boots though. And then you can choose if you want to buy more heals or just go into the next game. To go into the next game at this point, we're going to go back into our Squire, the thing that I showed you earlier in the video, and you're just going to hit re-equip base gear. And lastly, once you start to get a couple ones back to back, your gold will start to fill up a decent amount of space in your inventory. And something that you can do about that is buy gold coin purses. And for those, we're going to go to the treasurer, click on him, and he'll have these gold coin purses for sale for 5 gold a piece. These can save up to 50 gold within one of them instead of the normal stacks of 10. If you're not too worried about having floating money in your stash, then don't worry about this. But honestly, once you start to win, these are a lifesaver for stash inventory management. All right, and that is going to be the end of our Dark and Darker beginner guide. If there's anything that you feel like is really important that I should add here, leave me a comment and let me know. Or if you're a beginner and you have any more questions, please ask them. I'm here to help, and I want this game to survive. I want it to thrive, and I feel like Iron Mace has been doing a great job at updating it over time. And this is probably the best the game's ever been. So I want you to enjoy it. I know that the game's really hard, but I want people to enjoy the game, and I'm making this guide to try to show at least the fundamental basics. And then from there, you'll be able to grow and learn how to PvP and do all the other things. But fighting the mobs, learning how to loot, and just knowing all of the information beforehand seems really important to me, because I started with basically nothing and it was really hard to learn. There was a lot of videos about how awesome a class is or how you can get insane amounts of gold from killing a boss, but there really wasn't any helpful guides, and I've been trying to do that. The majority of them have been on Bard, but if you have questions about any class, please feel free. I've played most of them at least a decent amount, so I can give you at least basic information. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, please just give me a comment, like, or subscribe to the channel. Anything and everything helps, and I really do appreciate each and every one of you who do it. I also have a community Discord that I'm going to link in the description below. Feel free to click that, come by and say hey. It's still a relatively small community, but if you have any questions or you're wanting to group up with people, just feel free to come by and ask, and as long as people are around, it'll probably work out for you. And as always, I hope that each and every one of you have a very great day, and I hope to see y'all next time. Peace.